Well, let's go to Venezuela now and to the international condemnation of the vote to elect a new constituent assembly. Sunday's poll has been seen as a further move towards a dictatorship in the country. But President Nicolas Maduro has hailed the result. He said the assembly should declare a state of emergency and take control of the justice system. Well, 10 people died in clashes on polling day. That's the bloodiest day in nearly 4 very difficult months of unrest. To discuss all this, I'm joined from Washington by Mark Weisbrot, who's at the Center for Economic and Policy Research, and from Caracas by Carlos Flores, who's the contributing writer for Newsweek in Español. Carlos, let's start with you if I can. All the questions about the constitutionality or otherwise of this vote in any case, is that effectively put to bed now because the vote's been cast?
Well, Venezuela pretty much awakes with what many people consider an electoral fraud. It was also an incredibly violent weekend with 16 people killed between civilians and members of the security forces, and 200 wounded also. And there is a sense of the electoral fraud because, according to the Electoral Council, the government of Maduro got like about 8 million votes for this constituent election. That's more than what Hugo Chavez ever had in any election. And considering the social and economical crisis in Venezuela, that number, it doesn't sound real. And besides, what happened yesterday, it was a total denial of the way a regular election works. For instance, we had no international observers, at least no independent, and there was no media coverage. I mean, for reporters, in order to go to an electoral center, they have to be about 1,600 feet away from the electoral center.
Right, so lots of reasons lots of reasons to dispute it. Nonetheless, it's happened. What does the opposition do now?
Well, they are calling today for another march. They want people on the streets. The opposition leader, they spoke yesterday throughout the day, and they just calling the people to stay on the street, to keep all the protest. But you have to remember that a few days ago, the justice minister, he banned all protests in Venezuela. And according to this, if you go on the streets and demonstrators go on protest, they could face 5 to 10 years in jail.
Right.
That's the situation right now in Venezuela.
That gives an impression of the challenge. Mark Weisbrot, everything seems to be going in the wrong direction, not least from an American perspective at the moment. How much involvement, how much more involvement might there be from Washington?
Well, that's the big question, because the Trump administration attached additional sanctions right before the referendum and threatened to do more. And some members of Congress had, on Friday, pushed back with a letter to Secretary of State Tillerson saying no, that this would be a very bad thing. And I think it's important for people to understand how bad the international interference is. It really polarizes. You know, if you can imagine in the United States how much things have been polarized by the alleged Russian interference in the U.S. election, just multiply that times 100. You have a foreign. I mean, imagine if the Republicans embraced the Putin instead of trying to distance themselves, as the opposition has done with the U.S. Threats and intervention. Not all of them, but most of the leadership wants more U.S. intervention, more sanctions that would really cripple the economy much further than it already is. So this would be, I think, very polarizing. It's still a polarized country. It's true those numbers were not believable, but on the other hand, it wasn't really an election, right? The opposition boycotted, so that doesn't really make any difference. I mean,
right.
The main thing is that that you need a negotiated solution.
Right, now that's the point,
Maduro
isn't it?
Maduro has promised to have the elections, the presidential elections, on schedule next year. That's the thing that people should be working for,
But let me just ask you this, Mark.
Yeah.
You talk about the need for a negotiated solution. There is little indication that can be done from within. So who comes in to assist to make that happen?
Well, you do have international mediation of people who are impartial. The Vatican, the Pope, for example, who is mediating the Vatican, and the Pope has repeatedly called for dialogue and negotiation. And the Vatican was involved in mediation last year, and it didn't go anywhere because neither side was willing to compromise. But I think you saw some signs. For example, the international mediation helped a lot in the release of Leopoldo Lopez from jail to house arrest on July 9th. That was done through international mediation from people like Zapatero,
so
the
Mark,
Prime Minister of Spain.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Carlos. Let me put that to you. Can you see that as an option, and would both sides be remotely open to that?
Well, I had a question for Mark. Mark, are you against the sanctions, the international sanctions against the top Venezuelan officials?
Yeah, I think that is bad too. And it's actually illegal as well. Under U.S. law, the president had to state quite falsely to institute those sanctions that Venezuela poses an extraordinary and unusual threat to the national security of the United States. And that he had to declare actually a national emergency for the United States to have those sanctions because they're against the OAS Charter. It's illegal to use sanctions to try to influence
good point.
the
Carlos,
politics of another country.
Carlos, what do you make of that response? What do you make of the sanctions?
Well, I want people to really understand what's going on here because it's a very complex situation. But I want to use this example, okay? Mark, let's figure that you are living in this apartment building. You live on the 4th floor, right? And on the 1st floor, you got this group of people who are criminals. And these people, they kidnap other neighbors, and they are drug dealers and all sort of criminal activities. And you, because you live on the 4th floor, you say, no, I don't want to get involved with that. It's okay. And you talk to the other neighbors, and you say, just leave it with the problem, pues.
Get to the point, Carlos, because we're short on time. Get to the point.
That apartment, that situation, that apartment is Venezuela, and the building is the region and the world. And when you take a look at what, for example, Michael Fitzpatrick said a few days ago, that Vice President Tarek al-Aissami, he has like $5 million in assets in the U.S., and they are already frozen, those assets.
Okay, but Carlos, we've got the message. Carlos, we've got the picture, we've got the argument. But let me come back to the point rather than going over that again. Briefly, what about the idea of an international-driven mediation? Suggestion from Mark was the Pope.
Well, the thing with international mediation, and that so far hasn't worked, let's take, for example, what former President Zapatero has done in the country, is that for the majority of the Venezuelan, the way out of this crisis is for President Maduro to resign. That's it. So
Mark, that would be the way ahead. Thank you, Carlos. But Mark, a resignation from Maduro, the need for some effort to make that happen, that's what's needed, according to Carlos.
Well, we've had a lot of experience with U.S.-sponsored and enforced regime changes or facilitated in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Syria, in Central America in the 1980s, more recently in Haiti and Honduras. All of these have been horrible disasters. I don't see how the United States really, and every expert you talk to, no matter what side they're on, it doesn't really see the United States playing a positive role here.
Okay,
I mean, they've
so
been
Mark, I'm going to take it at that point. I'm sorry to cut you short, but I'll take that point made very clearly. I think we agree to disagree, our two contributors today, but to both of you, Mark Weisbrot and Carlos Flores, thank you very much indeed for joining us.